Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at The Journey Saga, Volume 1, Tall Tales. This is a collection published by Fantagraphics Books in 1987, collecting the earliest stories by William Messner-Loeb, featuring his character, his frontier character, Wolverine MacAlistaire. I was buying those comics when they were coming out back in like 83 they started. Maybe I started in 84, and that's why I have this collection, because I didn't have the original 3 issues. But man, I love these comics. They were unlike anything I was reading at the time. It was a black and white comic about a frontiersman in 1810 America. But it's so good. They're so entertaining. The writing is just amazing. And this is before William Messner-Loeb, did The Flash at DC and all those superhero comics. This is pretty much what he did. He had a few short stories here and there in ground level comics throughout the 70s and the early 80s. And then he hooked up with Dave Sim. Dave Sim gave Wolverine MacAlistaire 2 little backup stories, 4 pages each in 2 Cerebus issues. The response was good, and then he began publishing Journey under his Aardvark Vanheim imprint. Apparently there was some acrimony there, and after a few issues, maybe 8 issues, something like that, he left Aardvark Vanheim and went to Fantagraphics. So that's why they're publishing this. This is about 4 years after the first stories came out. It's a pretty slim volume. Basically the equivalent of 3.5 issues of the comic. Maybe 4.5, something like that. But, man, this is some good stuff. So, let's crack this open, but not too much, because this spine doesn't look like it's going to hold out if I open it up too much. We have an introduction from Will Eisner, and this is interesting because William Messner-Loeb takes a lot of inspiration from Will Eisner. Wolverine MacAlistaire is nothing like the Spirit. But, well, actually, the stories do have the humor of the Spirit and kind of the interesting characters, but it's mainly about the storytelling. He doesn't draw anything like Will Eisner, but he, studied the way Will Eisner would tell a story using different size panels, playing with the rhythm of the panels, just everything like that kind of a hardcore storytelling. And I gotta say, William Messner-Loeb is great at it. I was reading these last night for the first time since, the 80s. And I just breezed through it. I didn't want it to end. He's such a good storyteller. I just wanted to keep reading. It was so fun. Here's the title page. We have a foreword by these 2 guys. I assume they're Comics Journal writers. And it's very informative. It gives us a little bit about William Messner-Loeb's life. Tells us the whole history of how Journey came to be. And it's a pretty damn good intro. And now we have another introduction from Donald Simpson of Megaton Man fame. And here we go with the stories. So this is the first 4-page story that was in Cerebus as a backup. It's called Search. And as you can see, he's not the best artist in the world. His actual art skills, he has a very idiosyncratic way of drawing. Let's just say that. Nobody quite draws like him. I do like his lettering. I mean, he gets way better. This is just his earliest stuff. But I think he was inspired by Dave Sim with a lot of this lettering stuff, the fancy logos and sound effects and stuff. So we're at a dock, a ferry dock. We see this stranger, we don't see his face, and this guy comes up and says, "Hey, how long you've been waiting for the ferry? I really got to catch it. I'll tell you why." And he says, "You ever heard of a goober called Wolverine MacAlistaire?" And the stranger says, "Can't say I have." And so this guy it basically becomes the narrator of our story. He unloads to the stranger all about how him and his 2 buddies were basically in the frontier. They were frontiersmen, but it sounds like they were just criminals. They would just go around robbing people and hurting people. But of course, it's an unreliable narrator, so he just acts like, oh, we came across this Wolverine MacAlistaire guy, and he was really unreasonable. But really, they wanted to rob him and take all of his crap. And he fought back. And he fought like a Wolverine. That's why he gets his name from. He's a pretty formidable guy. But these guys overpower him. They take all of his stuff, including his rabbit skins, and they hog tie him up. Basically, they leave him to die from the elements because it's winter. He's got no shirt on, just a pair of pants. After they leave, though, they thought there was no way he could break free from this, but that's why Wolverine MacAlistaire was a legend in this time. They kind of act like Wolverine MacAlistaire was up there with like Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone. Like in this world, people know Wolverine MacAlistaire. He's legendary. So with his just willpower, he breaks free from this entrapment. We can already see early on doing interesting things with storytelling, making this way more dramatic than just a couple panels of him like, I broke the sticks, I'm free. And the narrator says, he tended his wounds and he began to search for us. Look how crude these trees are. He gets a lot better at the flora and stuff. So now here's chapter 2, and we're back to the ferry, and the narrator, this guy, continues the story. He said the first one to run into Wolverine was Coomer. His name was, let me double check that name. Oh, sorry, Cooner. Maybe because he wears a coonskin cap, I don't know. And Wolverine tracks him down near Fort Detroit, chases him. Already he's doing kind of interesting panels, like from different angles and stuff. That's a definite Eisner thing. And he thinks he escapes, but Wolverine outsmarts him. And he basically says, I come for my pipe and shoes, you son of a bitch. The dialogue in this is really rich and really good. William Messner-Loeb was a history major, and he got his degree in history. And from everything I've read, these are very well researched, and he really immersed himself in like historical knowledge of that time, particularly Michigan. A lot of this takes place in Michigan because that's where Bill Loeb's lived. The other guy, Hook Rods, I think that's is it Hook Roos? Yeah, Hook Roos. He became a guide, but look. We see what kind of guide he is. Apparently, he would just like say he'd be someone's guide, and then once they're on the frontier, he would assault them. And it looks like he's about to sexually assault this poor woman here. And Wolverine shows up in the nick of time, stabs him with a knife, and he says, "I've come for my shirt, you feckless bastard." And now we're back in the ferry dock, and so he says, you see why I'm so scared? Why I got to get in that ferry? I got to get to Canada. Wolverine's coming after me next. And all of a sudden, this character comes out of the fog on the dock. And the narrator whips around with a shotgun and shoots him, thinking it's Wolverine. Even after he shoots him, he's like, I did it. I killed him. And the stranger says, that's so? You probably know where this is heading already. Of course, the stranger is Wolverine MacAlistaire. He's been listening to the whole story. And he says, I come for my rifle. And the guy tries to pull a pistol on him. There's a struggle, and Wolverine ends up killing the guy. So then he wades into the water. It turns out that shadowy figure coming out of the fog, that was Cooner. And I think Wolverine's just curious. He says, I took back my pipe and let you go. Why'd you come back, Cooner? And he says, I had to warn him. He was my friend. So right off the bat, we see that William Messner-Loeb's, this story is going to be filled with multifaceted characters, not one-dimensional. These guys are pure evil. They just go around raping and robbing and killing. But, but they're friends, and friends help each other out. So I just thought that was really great. So now we have, I believe this is the first issue. It is, definitely. And we can already see a vast improvement in the art. Still very simple and spare, but you get the idea of the landscape. He's pretty good at that, just like certain manga artists, where it's just like, no, I don't have to draw everything. If, I draw the tree line here, and there's grass at his ankles, so you kind of figure out, oh, this is a grassland, I like these birds flying. So it's springtime, and Wolverine, he's out hunting. And he mentions something about how you got to be careful in springtime because the youngins, basically the new animals that have been, growing up during winter, they're a little, they got a little fire to them. They're peppery. And oh God, I didn't even mention this, guys. I gotta point this out. So look at this panel, these panels here. Wolverine walking, the same background. It's just like there's a still camera filming this. Nothing. And then we see Wolverine all of a sudden burst out of that tree, the bunch of trees there. And he's running like a maniac. And we don't know why. But we'll find out very soon. Now we see two more panels of nothing. And then we see coming into the foreground, it's a bear. That's what Wolverine's running from. It runs right towards the camera, past it, even blacks out the camera, and continues chasing Wolverine. So Wolverine's running. Here's another example of that, like, spare. Look at all this negative space here. Just white. But it's great to me. I think this works great. His face is so weird. He almost looks like a funny animal character, even though he's human. So the bear's in hot pursuit. The bear's not stopping. Wolverine jumps up into a tree to try to escape him. And this bear is like just a huge bear. And it just knocks the tree over effortlessly. Wolverine comes tumbling down. I really like this panel here. It's great. The way Wolverine's tumbling out of the panel. So he continues running. He's got to. He's got no choice. And as he's running, without even breaking stride, a rabbit runs out in front of him. He shoots it. And then as he runs past it, and look, once again, guys, how great this cinematic shit is. He's running towards us. And then he's, getting closer and closer. And then as he passes the rabbit, it's almost like he's running by the camera here. He grabs the rabbit without slowing down at all. So he's ripping it up with his mouth while he's running as fast as he can. And then he's throwing chunks behind him to distract the bear, hoping the bear will stop and eat those little bloody rabbit chunks. At first, he's totally ignoring them. But finally, the bear is a little curious. The blood was a little tempting. And he turned his head to sniff the rabbit chunk, and he kind of missed. I think he was going to try to eat it, like open his mouth and grab it. And the bear trips. Of course, Wolverine's still running like a maniac. He's still just like, oh, that's just a temporary reprieve there. He does a lot of panels like this where it's almost like you got to flip it over. Those I'm not so thrilled with as far as storytelling goes. I don't like those panels where you got to do something like that. Unless it's something really like clever and interesting. So more of this like Wolverine running towards us and the bear in hot pursuit. And this bear, I'm sure, like, is not anatomically correct. It's not like, a zoological artist would be like, oh, it's terrible. But it works. I don't know. It works for me. Like, there's some badly drawn animals in comics where you're just like, it takes you out of the comic. But this didn't at all. It's almost like just the platonic form of a bear, the platonic ideal. I like these silhouettes of the trees here that he's running through. This whole issue is just so cinematic. It's all about the storytelling. He does all these kind of fun things, like Wolverine runs by this tree branch, hooks his gun, swings up on it, and the bear knocks down the tree again. Another tree. I love this panel, him falling off the tree. And he grabs this pine. And he's too far from the river, to jump off this giant tree he's stuck on. So he decides to do something. Requiring only an empty rifle and lunatic courage, he leaps. With his gun, he catches this one branch. He hooks his rifle again, and it sends him into a huge arc, just enough to make it to this body of water. But that's not going to stop the bear. The bear's swimming after him. And Wolverine is just exhausted. He's basically on the other bank of this body of water. I think it's a river. And he's basically just like, I'm too tired to move. I guess this is it. And all of a sudden, the bear, halfway across, he just turns around. Look at him, bloop. And Wolverine, oh, I'm sorry, I should finish the sequence. We see him get to the other side and just walk away. And Wolverine's sitting there, can't believe his luck. He says, we just went to show bears get tired too. Now we got chapter 2, which I believe is issue number 2. I think these issues were, they were slim. Aardvark Vandenheim, all their comics were like 24 pages, and there were some ads. So most of these are probably like 20 pages each issue. So now this is basically a day or two later. Wolverine is trying to fix his gun because it's got all this water in it. He's drying off his clothes. And these two guys show up. These two fur trappers. They're French. And there's a little guy who's kind of like the boss. Three-Finger Pierre. And his nephew, who's this big, strapping young brute. Turns out Wolverine's heard of this guy. And he knows he's a feckless piece of shit. He's just a total bad guy all around. So, of course, they're kind of making veiled threats. They're like, oh, pity your shotgun isn't working. Oh, look at my gun. It works just fine. Because he's just out there at the mercy, of these guys. There's no police are going to show up or anything. They're in the middle of the frontier. So this young buck, he goes a little too far with his innuendos. And Wolverine just grabs his broken rifle, conks him out, hits him on the wrist. And then they start a big Donnybrook here. And, this guy's huge and strong and young, but Wolverine, he knows his business. I like it, like Wolverine not only is a very formidable fighter, but he also fights smart and dirty. He just knows how to win. He throws gunpowder in this guy's face. And then, of course, Pierre is just all like, oh, let's be friends. He scolds his nephew. And the whole time, Wolverine is just all like insulting him. Everything he says, he's just like Pierre says, I have a business deal for you. And Wolverine just says, I'd sooner do business with a rabid coyote. So I guess Wolverine just is hungry. So he's sharing the campfire with these guys. The whole time the young nephew is whining about how his leg hurts and his arm and his shirt's ripped and he paid so much for his shirt. I paid $4 for it, and it's all ripped. And I love this little bit here. Wolverine just says, here, hand it over here. And he's got a needle, and he starts fixing the guy's shirt. The guy tried to kill him. And he says, yeah, my father was a tailor. I'm good at this stuff. So Pierre gives him a package. He says, I need you to deliver this to this place that's through the wilderness. It's a dangerous wilderness. I don't want to go. I was paid to deliver it, but now I'll pay you to take it the rest of the way, since you're heading that way anyway. But the dialogue in this whole issue, you can totally see the Dave Sim influence. Like, it's just all about just humorous dialogue, really witty, very character-based humor. A lot of things kind of are referenced in early issues and then continue later. This issue ends with him trying to get to sleep. And he finally does. And as he nods off, he says he wonders if the nightmares would come to him tonight. As it happened, they didn't. So we find out that Wolverine apparently has something plaguing him, mentally. So Pierre and his nephew take their canoe and ride off. They give him a bunch of stuff to deliver that package, like tobacco and stuff. Of course, it's really bad tobacco. Pierre whispers, he says, roll quickly before he finds out how nasty that tobacco is we gave him. So this is Chapter 3, The Forgotten. Wolverine comes across a corpse. Well, it's a skeleton. It's, I guess, all winter it's been rotting. And there's a book next to it. He's curious. He's just like, all these times, so many times I found corpses, I had no way of knowing their story, how they got there. But this guy left his diary. So he's just like, for once I get to find out. He sees a gunshot in the guy's, I think it's his vertebrae. So he was killed by a bullet. I like Wolverine putting on his little reading spectacles. Like, just after this first issue, or first two issues, I love this character. Wolverine MacAlistaire is such a cool guy. He's not necessarily a good guy. It's not like he's a hero. He does a lot of good things. I mean, basically, he has a good heart, but he really is just this frontiersman, All he cares about is just surviving. So he finds a pistol in the grass, all rusted over. It's been there all winter. You can already see the art improving and also, using this duotone and shaded stuff. It is kind of interesting, too, that he later teamed up with Michael T. Gilbert, or at least he helped Michael T. Gilbert create Mr. Monster. He wrote and inked the first few... No, he didn't write them. He co-wrote them maybe and inked the first few episodes of Mr. Monster. And I see a lot of Michael T. Gilbert in his work, which of course is obvious because they both idolize Will Eisner, both of those guys. Even though neither of them really draws like Will Eisner, but they do, they basically take inspiration from Will Eisner's storytelling, as I said. So they have totally different styles, but they ended up working together. And somehow I do see some Michael T. Gilbert in here. It's a little looser. So then he comes across this crazy guy singing in the forest. And singing about acorns a lot. And he's throwing acorns around. He's got these two little birds that follow him around. They just flit about him. This is like one of the first touches in Journey, even though it's well-researched and very historical. William Messner-Loeb puts in stuff that's kind of fantastical. But almost like the way a magical realist would, It's not like all of a sudden there's dragons and stuff. It all kind of fits. But there's definitely something not, unreal about some of the things that happen in this comic. Like just the fact that this guy has these two little birds. So this guy's batshit crazy. And I guess he's trying to be like Johnny Appleseed, but he calls himself Jimmy Acorn. And he's throwing acorns everywhere. He says, I'm going to, make this place blossom with the mighty oak trees. And William Messner-Loeb says, this is the vastest oak forest in the world, you idiot. And the guy just smiles and says, thank you. And that was so great. Like, that's the kind of humor. It's very Cerebus, Dave Sim-inspired humor. Almost like it would actually work if you filmed this. Like, this dialogue could be spoken and it would still be funny. A lot of, comic book dialogue, if you actually say it out loud, if you were doing a play of it, it's like, doesn't really cut it. His character's crazy. So he wanders off, and of course, Wolverine is just like, what the hell? And then he comes upon a cabin. He figures there's not many cabins in these parts, so there's a good chance that dead guy lived here. He knocks on the door, and this woman opens it up. Turns out it's the corpse's widow, and she's pretty crazy. In fact, she's convinced that Wolverine is her husband. She keeps calling him by her husband's name. And she thinks she lives back in Boston. The way she's talking about all this gossip about the town. And so she's pretty nuts. It seems like she doesn't even know her husband's dead. Or has no clue that he's even been missing. So Wolverine ends up hanging out. He wants some food. Kind of weird how she's a vegetarian. She doesn't eat any meat. So he ends up doing chores for her. Because, there hasn't been a man around the house. And he kind of gets into this little, this is pretty nice it's not bad, having her cook for me. I do a few chores. There's a nice fire. I guess even Wolverine MacAlistaire gets tired of living in the forest. But he also kind of feels sorry for her. That's why he's sticking around, the main reason. So Wolverine figures... See, this shows that Wolverine is this totally, heroic guy. This poor crazy woman, Wolverine's hoping that, she does think I'm her husband. I might get some action tonight. But that is not to be. He goes to bed in the loft, and he has one of his nightmares. In a lot of his nightmares, he's a skull. He wore his bones outside his skin, so's they be convenient. And it seems like in his nightmares, he's just traumatized by the dark man, who kind of just looks like a big monkey, big gorilla. He wakes up from his nightmare. The days pass, he's doing chores, and Wolverine's starting to get almost a little scared. He's like, I think this woman killed her husband. Or at least there's a chance she could have. So he's kind of a little on edge, He's just like, I gotta keep my eye on this woman. Here's one of those sideways panels. I don't think that works at all in any comic. We gotta do this. It's pretty well drawn, though, the trees and everything, but I don't like that. So she remains deluded. She's completely nuts. And then this guy comes out of nowhere. This, I believe, is a Wyandotte Indian. And apparently this guy, this local tribe, has been feeding this woman. Every month this guy comes with a food package for her. They just feel sorry for her, I guess. They just pity her. And they know she's crazy. So this guy, he's kind of like a loser guy. And he's whining about the whole time, like, oh, sure, I don't mind trudging through the forest in 100-degree weather, carrying all this food for this crazy lady. I'm glad to, all sarcastic. So apparently he's just a peon. She kind of says something about the Indians, something bad, and Wolverine says, you wouldn't be alive without them. What are you talking about? They're the ones who keep you alive. Some of these faces are almost like something from Mad Magazine. And so Wolverine has another nightmare, which starts as a good dream, a wet dream, but it's just a dream that kind of freaks him out. So the whole time Wolverine is reading this guy's diary, trying to get a clue as to what really happened. And he kind of figures out that the guy who died, the husband, he wasn't a good man and wasn't a good father to their children who are dead now. And we find out that's why she went insane. I believe 3 children, they all died. They came down with this weird sickness. And it seems that's when she snapped. And the husband kind of just took off. Because deep down in her heart, he was a frontiersman. He didn't like staying at home all the time. But from the diary, like just the way he talks about his kids, Wolverine is like, yeah, maybe this guy was just a piece of shit. And maybe that's why she killed him. Some more of these cinematic panels. And Wolverine makes a discovery. Right near the house, there's this white snake root. And, he knows all the forest lore. So we'll find out about that later. Now, Wolverine's out smoking a pipe, trying to get some peace and quiet. Someone taps him on the shoulder, scares the shit out of him. And it turns out it's a Jemmy acorn again. I didn't even mention, guys, I forgot to mention this earlier. These 2 birds that flit around Jemmy, they shit into his mouth, and that's how he sustains himself. He even tells Wolverine, he's like, hey, you should try it. It's got good fiber, and it actually has some nutritional value. It's like manna from heaven. That's how I survive out here in the wilderness. Of course, he's still throwing his acorns everywhere. So he's been talking to the Indians, and he says that the Indians, they kind of fear her. Maybe that's why they feed her. They say she's like a lady spider. She kills her mate and then eats him like a black widow. So the Indians, the Wyandotte tribe, they think she probably killed her husband too. So now Wolverine, of course, is just like very wary. So what happens is basically we find out that Wolverine, he knows his lore, he's got knowledge. He says, so you said that when your kids got sick, you were making them lots of like milk puddings and, trying to make them stronger. But actually this white snake root, cows eat it and it makes their milk poisonous. They're fine. They're still on they're a little wobbly, but they can still produce milk. They don't fall over dead, but their milk passes on this basically poison. And that's how your kids died. It's not like God's reckoning because your husband wandered off. And of course, she's totally denial. She doesn't want to hear it. Seeing these pictures of Wolverine at certain angles, I'm like a little distant from the page. And it really does look like a funny animal. It looks like, it's like this monkey man. The way he draws him. Excuse me, guys, sorry. Oh, I need water. He has another nightmare. And then when he wakes up, the widow has a knife right over his head. Wolverine gets out of the way, pulls out his gun, his rifle, and she says, I was just trying to kill this rat. I heard a rat. So it's like, what? And she says, I can't believe you were going to shoot me. And finally, just Wolverine MacAllistare's had enough of this shit. He's got to go. He did his good deed. And I love this last panel, though. As he leaves, the whole time she called him by her husband's name. She could never get it out of his head. He kept saying, I'm not your husband, goddammit. But as he leaves this last panel, she says, goodbye, Joshua. That's Wolverine's first name. Almost like part of her does know. It has a lucidity to it. Or at least it pops out every now and then. Which I guess that happens. Like my mom has dementia. And every now and it happens less and less. But every like 50th day should be smarter and like remember things. And you could almost pretend that she, was her old self. But then it would go away again. This is a really well-written prose story, The Fisting Contest. And there's a narrator in here who I think is young Wolverine MacAlistaire, but it might not be. I don't know. It could be Wolverine as a young man when he was in the circus. So basically it's a circus tale, really colorful, great characters. Really seems like it's researched. I'm not going to get into the whole thing because it's not a comic, but it's really good, really entertaining. 3 pages. So now we got chapter 4, Woods Children. There's a pretty nice page here. Still very loose, but detail where it's necessary. So we see this cabin, this dilapidated cabin in the woods, and we're introduced to a bunch of characters. There's a guy who's kind of like Edgar Allan Poe. I think his name is like Edgar Kraft or something, so it's almost maybe a mix of H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe. The story that he's reciting seems more Lovecraftian than Edgar Allan Poe-like. And there's a Mennonite couple there. And Wolverine's hanging out with them. This is a famous line from Journey. He says, whatever darkness a man has inside him, he brings with him into the frontier. So Wolverine still got that package that Three-Fingered Pierre gave him, or paid him to deliver. And the writer is amazed that he hasn't opened it. He's like, why would I open it? It doesn't belong to me. Wolverine is a very just practical character, So Wolverine runs into, I wish I could remember his name, sorry. But he's let's just call him the loser. The Wyandotte, who's just the peon. So he says, I've been tasked with, basically collecting you. The chief wants to talk to you. So Wolverine ditches him because he's like, this could be trouble. I'd rather make my own appearance rather than be led into this camp, And this peon guy, he's just totally chatting, thinking Wolverine's behind him for like a quarter mile. He's a total doofus. He also sees these 2 guys, and they're very silly. They're adult men, but they're splashing each other in the water like little kids. But they're just really good friends, but kind of goofballs. Kind of chowderheads. And when, let me see. Try to get his name. I can't get it now. So the peon guy finally realizes that Wolverine's not behind him. He says, yeah, look, I got Wolverine. He's right behind me. And of course he's not. So we're introduced to the chief of the tribe and this guy, Far Raven. And he's just this big lug. And apparently the chief's daughter has been kidnapped. Riverwind. She's been kidnapped, and Far Raven's like, oh, I'm going to rescue her. And then Wolverine shows up all cool and nonchalant. He's just saying, I hear you wanted to see me. And the chief tells him what's going on. He says, I want you to rescue my daughter. There's a funny moment where he's like, the chief says, let's go smoke some tobacco and we'll talk about this. And Wolverine says, hey, I got all this tobacco from Three-Fingered Pierre. And they all vomit. It's so nasty, the tobacco, that they can't even hold it down. And we're introduced to Jemmy Acorn. Apparently the Wyandotte tribe, they captured Jemmy, and they've got him buried up to his neck. He's oblivious. He's just making new songs. He's just, basically he's constantly writing this song that has like 500 verses, over the span of months. Just keeps writing verses. So he's buried up to his neck. They're probably going to torture and kill him, but he just keeps writing a song with a smile on his face. The chief says that we caught him preaching evil spirit nonsense to our children. So that's why they want to punish him. These guys aren't bad. This Wyandotte tribe, they're like Messner-Loeb is really good at just like depicting very humanized versions of this tribe. So different than the romanticized version of the Native Americans we read a lot of, or the villainous side, like in old-timey stuff where all the Indians were, scalping people and, killing everyone. I mean, all these things did go on. But he had, there's, goofy characters here, just these total goofballs. You don't often see that in things about Indians and Native Americans. So that big guy, God damn it, I already forgot his name, read something. He challenges Wolverine to a fight because he's the one who wants to rescue the chief's daughter. And Wolverine takes him down one punch. Wolverine's definitely the dude. I like this as they cut back to the present, in that dilapidated shack with the Mennonite couple and the author. This is I like this technique. It's almost like an oil slick on the water, just to show it's almost like the Wayne's World thing, the time thing. But in comics, I like it works well. It's almost like there's a hole in this page or a strip cut out, and we're seeing the future. So Wolverine is going to this place, and here's a very big example of magical realism, because it turns out the chief's daughter was kidnapped by Sasquatch, and there's this whole group of Sasquatch. And Wolverine is just fearless. He just walks right into the camp. And it's weird, just by trying every language he can think of, he's able to communicate with the chief Bigfoot. And basically he mushes up some Indian languages, Native American languages, and some Inuit. And then it seems like they understand him, and he can understand them. So they say, we know you've come for the little she, but you can't have her. She's needed. And here's the daughter of the chief. So basically, the Sasquatch kidnap women from this tribe, from the Wyandotte, a couple a year, so they can breed with them. There's female Sasquatches there. I don't know why they can't breed. Maybe they just can't breed fast enough. So Wolverine tries to reason with them. He figures out what they're talking about, and he says, these women are too small for you guys. They keep dying on you, so they can't make any children. Why do you keep kidnapping them? This is, it's not working, so why don't you just let her go? And then all of a sudden, we hear this cry of, kill the demons, and these arrows fly through the air, and they kill one of the Sasquatch, or at least injure him. And it turns out it's, I guess the one they call Red Sticks, the big lug. He's got another name, but, and then those two goofballs we saw playing in the water. So they decided to have a raid, to score points or whomp them. The Sasquatch makes short work of them. Man, some of this art is so crude. William Messner-Loeb's can be really crude here. But the storytelling is just great. It really sucks you in. I love this page. The Sasquatch just throws one of the guys. Everyone's looking at him just fly through the air. Once again, all that white space, I love it. Another guy gets thrown into this tree. It looks like he's dead. His spine is totally snapped. And then the Sasquatch blame Wolverine MacAlistaire. They think he was, part of this. That he was trying to lull them into a sense of security, and then the Wyandotte would attack. So they throw him through this bush, kind of hurt his arm. But once again, I'm such a sucker for this kind of panelology. And the only Wyandotte left standing is the big dumb lug. And he's got a bow and arrow. He's going to shoot the Sasquatch. Wolverine pulls out his gun and shoots his bow and arrow so he can't kill them. He's like, no, he's just going to escalate it. So he knows he's got to stop this guy. And then they just grab him. And I think they rip him in two. Oh, no, I'm sorry, they don't. They just grab him. So Wolverine's calmed him down. Wolverine MacAlistaire is like, guys, just listen to me. And it seems like the Sasquatch are going to kill him. And now we fast forward. And the people listening to the story are like, what happened? And Wolverine says, they killed us. Now we cut away. This is some pretty nice drawing here. And everyone cracks up. I guess that's Wolverine's idea of a joke. Except for the writer. He's like, that is not amusing. So now we go back to the story. It turns out we're back in the village, the Wyandotte village. And it looks like that... that's his name, Far-Raven. That's the dumb big lug, the strong guy. Basically, the elders are like, we have to go to war against the Sasquatch. We're tired of them taking our women every year. Far-Raven is being proactive about it. If when he comes back, you're probably going to have to step down from chief. You've lost our trust. And would rather have Far-Raven lead us, even though he's a hothead. We kind of want a hothead right now. We want to attack the Sasquatch. Really great dialogue throughout this. I wish the series went on for like 300 issues. It's just so... all these characters, I want to read 30 issues about each one of them, So I guess Wolverine still has some calming down to do. the Sasquatch aren't too thrilled with him. And so Wolverine finally convinces the Sasquatch. He comes up with an idea. He says, listen, guys, these women keep dying. You're too big for them. You can't impregnate them without killing them. But you've got these female Sasquatch here. And so the Sasquatch are all like, oh, so you're going to do it? You're going to impregnate our women? He says, no, I'm not big enough. But Far-Raven is. And so Far-Raven is now, I guess, kind of recruited into being the bull stud for the Sasquatch. And all the Sasquatch ladies. This is like shades of R. Crumb's famous story, White Men and Bigfoot. Seems like a good fate for Far-Raven. He kind of deserves it. He gets back to the village. Wolverine kind of apologizes. He says, sorry, Far-Raven didn't make it back. He's missing. And the chief hugs him because, he's now he's not threatened, his position. And He convinces them to free Jimmy Acorn because he's got clout now. You know, he saved the day. So Wolverine uses a little bit of that clout to say, free that guy, he's harmless. And in gratitude, Jimmy Acorn writes this Wolverine MacAlistaire theme song. And of course, it's ludicrous. It's terrible. He even uses the line like, King of the Wild Frontier, just like the Davy Crockett theme song. See a lot of Sim in that. And so, happy ending for everyone. And now we're back in the present in that dilapidated little cottage. And just some really fun, interesting dialogue between all these characters. And Wolverine says, guys, I can't be your guide. They kind of expected Wolverine to lead them to safety because their guide ditched them. And these guys know nothing about the woods, about being a frontiersman. So he's like, guys, I got to go the other way. I got to deliver this package, but it's not far. It's 40 miles in that direction. Go to this fort. That's your best bet because you guys won't survive at all in the woods. And they even say, like, the Mennonite woman says, so you're just going to let us die in the forest? He's like, well, it would appear so. Well, good luck to you, but like I said, I'm not going to be your guide. But then he says, hey, I think I got guides for you guys. I do have a pair of guides for you. And it's the Sasquatch and Jimmy Acorn. And finally, the writer says, now that's funny. And that's the end of this book. Man, this is just a gem. I wish I could have read more dialogue to you, but of course the video would be long and also copyright issues. But there's a lot of great jokes in here. And you don't like corny jokes. They're like character-based humor. Just like Dave Sim and Cerebus was so good at Cerebus. So, highly recommended, guys. I'm really excited to read more of these. There's roughly about 28 issues, I think, something like that. So we're going to be looking at these for the next couple weeks or few weeks, and I'm excited. So I hope you guys enjoyed looking at this today, and I hope you join me in later episodes where we'll go on a journey. Sorry, that's so bad. We'll look at more issues of Journey. And after this, it's just comic books. I don't own any more collections. Okay, guys, that's it for tonight. And hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.